Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our regular scheduled board meeting of the Huntersville Town Board. I would like to call this meeting to order. And if you wouldn't mind, please taking these lovely little cell phones out and making sure that they are turned off or are on vibrate. We would greatly appreciate that. We up here will do the same. And if you would please now take a moment and join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now if you'll join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now move to staff questions. Board members, do you have any questions for staff at this time? Commissioner Kidwell.
Yes. Kevin Fox, you in here still? All right. How you doing, sir? Is there an update, and you sent me an email, and I can't remember the exact day, as NCDOT got back about the light here at Gilead and Huntersville Concord?
Yes, we were working through that. As you can tell, the work for this stretch of roadway in between 115 and the railroad track is underway. So we're doing the widening, and all of this gets milled and overlaid. So the NCDOT came back to us and said, yeah, there's not a whole lot they can do to the signal until we get the loop replaced. And to get the loop replaced, we have to mill and resurface this asphalt. So we're still hoping in the 4 to 6 week area before that's done, because it just doesn't make sense to put that mill in or put that loop in, mill it up, and have to replace it again. So that's the holdup on that signal.
So in addition, another 6 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're hoping that NCDOT would be able to tweak the timing in the cabinet, but they have indicated there's not anything else they can do to it to make it more efficient.
All right.
Commissioner Partee.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Jaycox, here in the... Mr. Jaycox, would you for the public announce our upcoming Wine on the Vine?
Yeah, so Wine on the Vine is May 25th, which will be right here at the trailhead. We have sold 97 tickets. We have about 50 tickets left. Every year it fills up, so you might want to go ahead and sign up for that. And also we have our jazz concert series this Saturday and Sunday at Veterans Park from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. So come join us.
Mr. Jaycox, when's Hello Huntersville?
Is that?
Hello Huntersville.
It was May 5th. I think it's May 5th, 6th, May 6th.
6, so mark your calendars. Commissioner Kovacs.
I had one more.
Oh, I apologize, Commissioner Partee.
That's okay, thank you. I just want to also thank Ms. Kim Strickland, our public PIO officer, for all her diligent work for the public and giving this town an exposure and a professional level, which involves the commissioners, the town staff. And I just want to say that you set the bar very high, and you will be missed. And hopefully, not hopefully, but I know the next county that you'll be working for is getting a very professional and pleasing person. Thank you so much for all you've done for town of Huntersville. Thank you.
Commissioner Kidwell, you had another question.
Yeah. Commissioner, no, wait, how would it is? Major Graham? Chief-elect Graham? Trying to figure out how to call this correctly. Yes, sir. You'd sent an email out last week that we had internally caught an issue with one of our officers having expired certificates, and we were taking care of that.
That's correct.
I know you've been traveling, so if you don't have all the information, I was curious if you were able to get all the information from the DA to make sure that we took care of any.
We did contact the DA. They're aware of that. All the citations have been accounted for. I don't know that they've all been notified from the DA, but we've done everything we could at
All
this
right.
point.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kovacs?
I saw in the manager's report that there were meetings about town hall, Mr. Williams?
Hey, yes, so you may, if you parked out in the back, you may notice some sticks sticking out of the ground. We've had our soil testing done, geotechnical and subsurface looked at. We have another meeting tomorrow. They're in design development right now. Our current plan is design development should get through May, June, and look for the consultants, Edifice Creech, to come back to you guys probably in June. Once we're through the design development phase, that's about 2/3 of the pre-con, and kind of give you guys some options to consider about the path we want to go forward with. Early packages, things that have long lead times, so that we can keep the project on track. And may have some additional information for you. I know you've got another budget meeting coming up next Monday. We've got another meeting with them tomorrow. We should have some additional updates then. We've only met once since our last update. So this is sort of where we are right now, but things are still moving forward. They're trying to figure out when we issue those early packages and sort of what your risk and exposure is with the percent complete of the process.
So I would say some big dollar numbers, the next decision in the June-ish, July timeframe, especially with early packages like ordering steel and things like that. That's when you get into big numbers, so you can sort of pre-order those. So those are some decisions we'll be coming back to this board to decide if you're ready to move forward with that.
And there are some materials that are just taking an exorbitant amount of time right now to get in. So those are the things they would have lined up. And so the process they're going through right now is helping them refine their numbers so that, they can make sure they're staying within that $29 million all-in budget that we've given them. And so they want to be able to get the information back, kind of vet it, run it through their checks, and then bring it back before the town board to make sure we're all in line.
Any other questions for staff at this time? All right, seeing none. We'll now move, excuse me this evening, my allergies are getting the best of me. We'll move into the public comments, requests for presentations. We do have a presentation this evening from the Citizens Climate Lobby. If you wouldn't mind coming on up to the podium here, and if you would please state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
And I'm Mary Ann Sprung.
Good evening, Mayor Bales and board members of Huntersville and town staff. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Oh,
Yeah, if you want to use this, you've got
oh, all
access
right,
to your
thanks.
slides.
Okay, good. Takes a little while to get used to the gadgets. So anyway, thanks for having us and giving us the opportunity to speak to you. We are, get my own thing going. The four of us, Kendall Brown, Don Gordon, myself, and Mary Ann, are members of a local committee. Citizens Climate Lobby is a nationwide organization with many local chapters in the US and Canada. And as members of the climate, and Don is here tonight, Mary Ann and I. Kendall is a college student studying climate science in Georgia and not able to be here with us tonight. So Mary Ann and I are your presenters tonight. And by the way, we thank you with meeting individually with each of us over the past few months, I guess a year. We're we're asking you this evening to move forward to draft and adopt a resolution asking Congress to enact a carbon fee and dividend legislation. And we're here to talk about what we feel is a crisis. This graph is from the 2023 report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which is part of the United Nations. The IPCC members are among the world's most noted climate scientists. Their this graph shows world greenhouse emissions from 1970 to 2010. So the striking thing about this is that in this 40-year period alone accounts for 50% of all the increase in carbon dioxide in all of human history. So we're truly on a very rapid increase. And it certainly has continued to increase since 2010. So we're all contributing to this, and we can help stop this.
There is a cost if we don't act. The UN scientists warn us that many effects of climate change cannot be reversed. Science tells us that fossil fuel emissions precipitate more frequent hurricanes, tornadoes, heavy rains, floods, and drought. And we've already seen that on newscasts. Last year alone, such extreme weather events cost the U.S. over $160 billion in structural damages. More importantly, though, is the far more tragic fact that over 500 Americans lost their lives and countless others were injured terribly last year because of climate events. Earth is experiencing more severe hurricanes than ever before with floods due to sea level rise. So our own Outer Banks and other coastal areas have taken a beating with negative impact to our vacation industry. Many of you may know that 4 homes in Rodanthe have already been destroyed by the sea. Beach nourishment projects are only temporary solutions. The IPCC experts warned that time is running out while our CO2 levels continue to climb. They say we must cut carbon emissions in half, that's 50%, by the year 2030, and that's just a little over 6 years away. Or irreversible damage will be sustained by life on Earth. It's really kind of chilling. Think of Earth's plight as being similar to that of a carbon dioxide overflowing bathtub. The faucet is running full blast because we human beings have forgotten to turn it off. The recent Inflation Reduction Act provides funds for development of clean energy, infrastructure, electric cars, solar, wind farms, hydroelectric power, and more geothermal projects. This is great. These initiatives are a huge step, but they're going to take so much longer to help us get to 50% reduction with only 6 years left. We need to cut emissions quickly. If we continue as we are now, it's as if we are mopping the bathroom floor without turning off the faucet first.
So let's take a look at how the carbon fee, what we propose and what CCL is proposing and lobbying Congress on is a Carbon Fee and Dividend Act. And so we can think about how this works. Here we are.
Could I just jump in and tell you that in your packets, you have what's on this slide, so you can read along with it.
And this is, the good news is that we have a way to turn off the faucet. The Carbon Fee and Dividend Act is a way to use strong market forces, the invisible hand, so to speak, to drive positive change. So how does it work? A fee is charged when fossil fuels enter the economy. That would be at the wellhead for oil and natural gas, at the coal mine. As the increased price of oil and natural gas flow through the supply chain, the cost of goods and services of these carbon fuels would increase. The fee increases each year, but all fees are collected in a separate fund. They don't become part of the general revenue of the country. So they're collected in a separate fund and distributed to all Americans equally in equal shares to defray the effect of higher prices. Okay, so prices rise in things related to carbon fuels and the carbon fuels themselves. The fees are distributed back to the population, to the citizens, to defray the higher costs. An adjustment would be made at the border to account for imports, because we wouldn't want countries that are not doing anything to be able to sell carbon-based fuels at a lower cost and not have the fee attached to it. So it keeps a level playing field. So it's like with, as we all are familiar with gasoline prices rising. And what people do is they try to drive less, they look for the gas station that has the lowest price. That doesn't really work in the long run. And when it is a long-run process like this that will increase bit by bit, year after year, people start to look for alternative ways. More fuel-efficient cars, electric vehicles, and so on and so forth. Some people say, by the way, that electric cars are already selling at a faster rate. But in 2022, last year, every major American manufacturer of automobiles offered an electric vehicle. And yet, last year, only 4% of all vehicles sold last year were electrics. So that, we're saying it really has to happen at a quicker rate. The great thing is, further good news is that we do have bipartisan support. There's another bill that's been introduced to Congress, and they're currently talking to kind of blend it, to find the best blend of the two bills together. Senator Tillis has said the fourth National Climate Assessment Report sends a glaring reminder of long-term climate change. Both parties need to work together to deploy an innovative, market-driven strategy to combat the impacts of climate change.
Several of our neighboring towns and cities have already drawn up similar resolutions, urging Congress to take decisive action. Many of them have gone on to develop climate action plans, which we now know qualifies them for generous funding from the Inflation Reduction Act to implement those climate action plans in their towns. Next slide. Please think of the futures of our children and our grandchildren. What will they be like? Tonight, we ask you to agree to select 2 board members to work with us to draft a resolution for board approval, of course, to urge Congress to pass the Carbon Fee and Dividend Act. Let's add the name of Huntersville to the list of other municipalities who are taking positive steps to quickly reduce our carbon emission.
Thank you very much. It was
Our
10
team
minutes.
looks forward to working with all of you on this vital project. Thank you. I just had one more sentence.
Perfect,
good
thank you so
timing, eh?
much. You did well.
We'd be happy to answer. Do we have time for questions?
Any questions from the board at this time? Okay. Commissioner Boone.
Yes, if I own a small business, in Huntersville, how is this going to affect me negatively or positively towards increasing my business?
It will impact you in any way that you may be using carbon-based fuels. In other words, how are you heating? Do you have delivery service or even buying goods that have to be shipped, say by truck or whatever? And having had my own business here in Huntersville, my wife and I for 14, 15 years, we were always battling changing prices and so on. So you look for, like other people do, alternatives. But it has, without having that pinch and forcing us to think about change, there is no change. The key is that the impact is taken off the shoulders of the citizens. So that, and they will move to more, if it works properly, they will move to less carbon-based fuels or things that are related. So yeah, it does hurt, but it's meant to cause change. And it's kind of like all the other things that cause change in our market system. Thanks, Dan.
It hurts only temporarily, and then the gains start rolling in. And if we think of the alternative, think about lives being lost and how they hurt.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so very much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
We're now going to move into public comments. And we have one person who has signed up to speak. And actually, well, I'm going to go ahead and take a second of liberty to also acknowledge the former electeds that are here in the room this evening. Former Commissioner Charles Ginyard, thank you for joining us this evening. And former Mayor Sarah McCauley is joining us this evening as well. And Ms. McCauley, you have signed up to speak, so I'm going to give you your 3 minutes now. Thank you for coming, and as you come up, I know you know the drill, but you have 3 minutes, and please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Sarah McCauley, 300 Gilead Road, Huntersville. Madam Mayor, Commissioners, I want to respectfully request you to pass the downtown study report that's before you tonight. It has been worked on with a lot of goodwill, different opinions coming together and passing it. And now is the time I'm asking you as leaders of the town to pass that. Then with you, citizens and staff and others can work to bring the action items to reality. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you for your leadership with the Downtown Steering Committee and those members that are sitting here this evening that gave a lot of time and effort, put a lot of time and effort into that Downtown Steering Committee. We're going to move into any agenda changes. At this time, are there any agenda changes this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
There's a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries. The agenda has now been adopted. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second. There is a motion and a second. Thank you both. All those in favor? Any opposed on the consent agenda? Seeing none, motion carries. We're now moving into other business. We do not have any public hearings this evening. The first item on the agenda is to consider adopting the 2023 Downtown Master Plan. Mr. Semino, if you'll please join us. Good evening, sir.
Mayor, thank you for having me tonight. In the agenda packet, I included a memo that mentioned that one of the changes from our last public hearing was that we were going to make sure the roundabouts that had symbols in the neighborhood was confusing, and they should not be there. So we're going to change all of our maps to delete that. It's on multiple maps, so we'll change that out. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions at this time? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the 2023 Downtown Master Plan.
Thank you. There's a motion, and Commissioner Boone, you were the second. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Commissioner Boone.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to echo what you had said earlier. I'd just like to thank the citizens who put in 3/4 of a year in planning this and make it come to fruition. And I just want to say thank you, each individual board member. And Sarah, thank you for your leadership as chairperson. And Lee Hallman, who's also was part of that leadership. And I want to say thank you to everyone.
Commissioner Kovacs.
I echo the same thanks. I attended all but I think 2 of your meetings, and it was a lot to keep up with, so I know you guys had a lot on your hands, so I appreciate it. I loved the spirited debate, and it was very incredible to see at the last meeting everybody able to agree and unanimously agree on the same plan. So thank you for all your hard work.
Commissioner Kidwell?
I'm going to beat a dead horse here, what they said. But also, I stayed away from the meetings because I truly felt and believed in the committee doing the right thing for the town, and I wanted them to have that freedom to do it, and they brought an incredible plan that they worked together on, and I thank you all for that.
Commissioner Partee?
I want to also echo my fellow commissioners. I believe that the committee did a fantastic job. I want to commend Ms. Sarah McCauley, Lee Holman for directing a great committee, and also Charles Ginyard for his input. I'm looking forward to seeing a viable, effective downtown that's going to meet all the needs of our citizens and community here in Huntersville. Thank you all for your input.
Commissioner Munger?
I will continue to kick that horse and say, really, based on some of the early meetings, just some of the nature of those conversations, and it just seemed like it would never possible come to an agreement. The fact that you came to a unanimous agreement in the end speaks to exceptional leadership, and I really do appreciate that, and look forward to seeing the results of this.
You know, the truth is that's the way sausage is made, right? And I purposefully took a step back and watched from a distance as well, simply because I know that when we develop plans that are citizen-driven, those are the most successful ones. And yes, it was a little rocky at times, but you all came together and truly did some remarkable work. So I look forward to this vote. So there is a motion on the floor, and there is a second. All those in favor? And is there anyone opposed? I see none. That motion carries. It is unanimous. Thank you so very much, Mr. Semino, and for the Downtown Steering Committee and all their hard work. We are now going to move to item 10B. Just keep my pages straight here. Now, this is a quasi-judicial hearing, so we will be conducting an evidentiary hearing and consider a decision on Charter Caldwell Station subdivision sketch plan. This is a request by Charter Properties, Inc. to subdivide 5.51 acres located at 17223 Old Statesville Road for a 39-unit townhome development. Mr. Pete, how are you this evening?
Very good, thank you, Mayor. I enter the staff report into the record. And this is the last hearing under the quasi-judicial process by a quirk of the calendar. I guess I will turn it back over to you to begin, and then I'll come in when necessary.
That sounds great. Now, do we have, the applicants are here?
We do?
Okay, perfect. So quasi-judicial hearings are evidentiary in nature. Only parties with standing, including the applicant, property owner, local government, and individuals who can show they will suffer special damages, have the right to participate fully in the hearing. Special damages must be particularized, separate, and distinct from damages to the public at large. Special damages are a fact-specific inquiry. While proximity may bear weight in the determination of special damages, proximity in and of itself is insufficient to grant standing. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Other individuals may but are not required to be allowed to speak as a witness. However, they will not be allowed to participate fully as a party, such as by questioning other witnesses or by calling other persons to testify. Excuse me. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. General witness testimony is limited to facts and not personal preferences or opinions. Certain topics require expert witnesses, including projections about impacts on property values and traffic impacts. Individuals providing expert opinion testimony must be qualified as experts and provide the factual evidence upon which they base their expert opinion. Mere conclusory testimony lacking the foundation of the expert's opinion is insufficient to establish the existence or non-existence of a fact or a conclusion. The board must base quasi-judicial decisions upon competent, material, and substantial evidence in the record. Competent evidence is evidence that is sufficiently trustworthy and reliable, and that is legally fit and acceptable for consideration by the board. Speculative, irrelevant, or vague evidence, non-expert opinions as to something that requires an expert, and non-expected hearsay evidence will likely not be competent evidence. Material evidence is evidence that shows that the standards will or will not be met. Evidence is substantial if it is relevant and regarded by a reasonable person as sufficient to support, pardon me. The pollen is killing me. Evidence is substantial if it is relevant and regarded by a reasonable person as sufficient to support a specific conclusion. Speculation, unsubstantiated fears of the community, or vague assertions do not constitute substantial evidence. Quasi-judicial hearings are constrained by the standards in the ordinance and the facts presented. Even though the board may hear other evidence, if it is not objected to, the board should rely on competent material and substantial evidence in making its decision. The board will recognize the applicant as a party, as well as the property owners if different from the applicant. Is the applicant here? And is the property owner here? Or are they one and the same? If you'll come on up. And I so apologize for my allergies. Are there other persons who believe they have standing to participate fully as a party? If so, please come forward at this time. Now, if each of you will just give me your name and address and just briefly state the reason why you believe you have standing. Anyone other than the applicant must provide a specific reason.
Eric Williams, Charter Properties, 1520 South Boulevard, Charlotte, North Carolina, part of the applicant group.
Thank you.
Vetter with Charter Properties, also of the applicant.
And your name? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Phil Vetter.
Phil Vetter. Thank you, sir. Mr. Trott?
Yes, good evening. Stephen Trott with the town, Director of Engineering, to answer any questions.
Thank you. And Mr. Pete?
David Pete with the Planning Department, presenting the application before you.
All right. Seeing that no one else is here, does anyone plan to call witnesses this evening? No? Okay.
Mayor, does that include, we have our land planner, engineer, do we need that?
Yes, please, if you wouldn't mind, please coming and introducing yourself as well, because I will be swearing everyone in or affirming everyone.
Good evening, Nick Bouchon, Design Resource Group.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Pete, if you wouldn't mind grabbing, greatly appreciate that, and come on up here. Now, you have the option to swear in or affirm, so if you wouldn't mind coming on up here. For those who are swearing in, left hand, right hand? I am holding it. I got it. We're all good. All right. Right hand up, left hand on the, yes, thank you very much. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Thank you. Now, the parties to this case are entitled to an impartial board. A board member may not participate in this hearing if she or he has a fixed opinion about the matter, a financial interest in the outcome of the matter, or a close relationship with an affected person. Does any board member have any conflicts of interest to offer at tonight's meeting?
Yes, question for Ms. Sloop. I served on the planning board when this project came before us for rezoning. Can I still sit on quasi-judicial? Thank you.
Any other disclosures at this time? Okay. I apologize, but there's a specific order that we must go through. The parties to this case have rights for any ex parte communication to be disclosed. Ex parte communication is any communication about the case outside of the hearing. That may be email communications as well as conversations with parties, staff, or the general public. Does any board member have any ex parte communications to disclose? Seeing none. I'd like to now call on planning staff for the presentation of their staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, this property is located on 115, just before the northern boundary of the town limits. Here are the 4 parcels that represent the 5.5 acres as they are represented on the west side of North Carolina State Road 115. You can see that the property is zoned neighborhood residential. It is the hatched area. Across the street or across the railroad tracks, you have a recently approved T&DU development, which has some mixed residential product. And then there is some corporate business property there in the gray that you can see. The majority of the property to the west and the rear of this, if you will, is the large Caldwell Station development that was approved in 1998. It has multiple facets to it. This is just a quick blow-up of showing you where the Caldwell Station apartments are to the rear of this. And then you can see some single-family homes that are part of Caldwell Station further to the left of the screen. And then across the street is that relatively new development that I just referenced. Just a real quick synopsis. Again, I've gone over the zoning. They're looking to build 39 townhomes on this property. That is a little over 7 units an acre density, which is very much in keeping with what you would want near a identified future rail station. The parking right there, as you can see, is very adequate in terms of the units that they're looking to provide. Here is the colorized area is the site plan. You can see that there are only 7 buildings, 3 of them along 115, and then there would be 4 in the back. The gray area in the back is the existing second phase of the Caldwell Station Apartments. It is also under modification, but it is a staff review. Everything about it is an administrative level of change. If anything new were to change that category, we would bring it back through a process. But right now, as we speak, it is perfectly in staff's wheelhouse, if you will. And so that needs to be approved, reviewed and approved, before this particular project would be able to dovetail into it. And I'll go over a little bit more of that in just a second when we look at the recommendation. Here's the site plan again in just a little more detail. You can see some of the trees in the middle there that are looking to be saved as part of an urban open space. But there's really just the one road running parallel to 115 and then the units that front 115. I'll be happy to go back over any of the details of the site plan if you'd like. After I move through, I won't bore you with the particulars of the data chart, again, unless you have questions, but it is compliant in all of its elements. Again, here is the extent of the project that needs to be approved in its modification in order for these townhomes to happen. Primarily, the road connection would not be possible without modifying Phase 2 of the apartments. And in particular, there is a wall, a large wall that was created, and that would have to be modified as well for this to take place too. So the 2040 community plan shows that this is a part of the town core. So there is really high density is supported in that area. This is everything that's basically within a several mile distance of 77, 21, and 115. And you can see that there's an activity center that is located right there where that future rail station is identified. And this illustration just shows you where those 3 stations are located as well. Quick CMS report that was in your packet. Obviously, they're looking at about 7 units, so it's a very minor CMS impact in terms of what they see. I just wanted to give you an update very quickly. The 3 parts or the 3 tests that we look at for this subdivision, we found the application to be complete. The requirements of the ordinance are being met with the following exceptions. I'm going to give you an update. The administrative amendment to Phase 2 of Caldwell Station Apartments, as I've alluded to previously, would need to be approved for this to happen. So that is a very specific recommendation from staff. The second bullet indicates that the applicants are asking for a modification to block length along 115. And that comes about primarily because DOT will not allow them to have another connection. And so because they cannot connect out to 115 in any other location, the block exception is supported by staff. The third bullet dealt with the elevations. They actually have been adjusted since they went to planning board. Staff finds them to be achieving what the ordinance is looking for. And there's actually going to be some color adjustment as well. And I'll let the applicant speak to that when it's their turn, because the black and white is all that we have at the moment. You can see in the 4th bullet in red that we do have the letter of willingness to serve letter from Charlotte Water that has been updated because it was over a year old. So no issues there. There is a particular note regarding a storm system bypass that has to go through Phase 2. And again, because that is not approved as I stand here, it needed to be stated that this is conditioned upon that. And all that is basically saying that the stormwater solution is on that other project, and they cannot go forward with the townhomes until that exists. So if you have any other questions beyond that, hopefully I could elaborate on that. And then the last 3 notes are our catch-all about town transportation, water quality, and all other miscellaneous planning notes that would be there to make the plan approvable. So with that, staff has, they have satisfied all of the requirements that staff had for recommendation. And because of it is compliant with our policies, plans, and ordinances, we would recommend conditional approval. Are there any questions of the proposal in front of you?
Any questions for staff? Commissioner Kidwell.
Yes. Mr. Pete, thank you very much. Very thorough. You mentioned future rail service a couple times. I don't think the red line's coming. Is this based off an old ordinance that allowed that?
It's based on the April 4 of 2022, which is the time that the application was submitted.
Okay.
And that's where we're standing based on ordinance, based on policies and plans, yes.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Boone.
Yes, Mr. Pete, you entered staff report into the record, and I've got a question about Part 6, the Planning Board recommendation. The Planning Board recommendations has 7 points here. 1, then it jumps to 3. What happened to number 2? It says 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
I can't speak to why that was not part of their motion, but this is the motion that they gave.
So there's nothing missing in this?
To my knowledge, they were iterated in that fashion.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Munger.
As you mentioned, this was accepted back in April of 2022, and it looked like it was accepted by the town May 27, 2022. Is there a time limit on how long that can be in this status? Because, I mean, obviously it's almost a year later. was there a specific time limit where this would expire and we'd had to vote or they would have to resubmit?
So the town of Huntersville does not have any hard rules about that. The county does, and we work with them through review. I can tell you that if a project were to remain pretty much in limbo for an extended period of time, and I'm going to say approximately 6 months or so, then we would very seriously look to contact and see what is going on. But we have been in very continual contact. There were a lot of different approaches that they were looking to use the property. First off, there was one approach where they weren't even using the property. And then they were thinking, well, maybe it did make sense. Maybe we would extend the apartments into that area. And so they went through a lot of different versions of the site plan. So there has been continual work on the project ever since, even though it is a long time. The applicants could certainly speak to it. As to what else affected how they came in or the frequency they came in, they can speak to that.
Commissioner Munger.
Yeah, sorry, I lied. I actually had 2 more questions. The specific item that we're looking at here tonight is the block length waiver, shifting it from 500 feet to and allowing it to be 775 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. My last question has to do with something that was mentioned in the planning board motion, that it sounds like perhaps if a motion were to be made tonight, I wouldn't, or whoever made the motion wouldn't have to consider. And that was item 2, the townhome elevations, too similar. It sounded like the new pictures they presented fulfill that request. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, at this point, if there's no other questions for staff, we'd now move to the applicant. Good evening.
Good evening.
The hoops and hurdles. Do you have something to present this evening, or would you rather open up for questions?
Just generally, I would like to say we've worked very closely with staff to become fully compliant on this plan. In regards to the timing of it, I don't know, David, exactly when we first submitted, but it was probably 7 or 8 months ago. And in order to work with DOT and the Tree Save and the little pocket park and the walkway through that for connection, those things sometimes take time. So we've worked really hard over the last 7 or 8 months to get to where we are and to be fully compliant.
Do you have any questions for the applicant at this time? Did I understand that there were some elevations, color elevations, that you had to present this evening, or no?
We don't have colored elevations. We submitted these elevations in response to staff questions about changing some of the design, so we responded with that. The reference is probably in regard to conversations we had with David and our staff at Charter on working to adjust some color and working with staff as we move forward on, we didn't have an exact color palette to come and say, this is what it's going to look like, but we offered to make those adjustments to provide some variation as staff looks at it as we move forward.
Mr. Mayor, if I may add, I think the important part of the commentary and conversation was that they would not be the same color.
Does the board have any more questions for our parties this evening? Okay. Hearing no additional questions or presentation of relevant facts, the board will now begin deliberation. The evidentiary hearing remains open so that the board may ask clarifying questions if needed. As a reminder, this board is tasked with deciding if, based on competent material, substantial evidence presented at the hearing before this board, this proposal meets the applicable standards If the applicant meets their burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will be met, the burden shifts to the other parties opposing the application to show by competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will not be met, and we did not have that this evening. If the applicant does not meet their burden of producing competent material and substantial evidence that the standards in the ordinance will be met, the board must deny the application. The application as originally submitted was considered by the planning board, and the planning board made a recommendation. Nothing that occurred at the planning board level, including the planning board's recommendations, is considered evidence that you can base your decision on. However, the planning board's recommendation may be useful to the board in identifying issues that this board may want to consider and evaluate based upon the evidence that was presented at the hearing before this board. At this time, is there a motion regarding this request? Commissioner Munger.
All right, buckle your seatbelts, this is gonna be long. Motion to approve the Charter Caldwell Station subdivision sketch plan. The town board finds that the application is complete and the Charter Caldwell Station subdivision sketch plan is consistent with adopted public plans and policies and complies with all applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance. And the Huntersville 2040 Community Plan as stated within the findings of facts in parts 2 through 4 of the staff report. The proposed charter Caldwell Station subdivision lies completely within the 2040 Community Plan Town Core Future Land Use Character Area and is supported by policies EOS 8.3, EOS 10, LU 2.1, LU 5.3, LU 7.1, LU 8.3, LU 9.1, LU 10.1, and T 5.1. The town board approves the Charter Caldwell Station subdivision sketch plan and the requested block length modification for the NC 115 block not to exceed 775 feet. The approval is contingent upon the applicant working with staff to resolve: 1, the administrative amendment to Caldwell Station Apartments Phase 2 must be approved for the subdivision to be approved. 2, add a note regarding storm system bypass through Caldwell Station Apartments Phase 2 required for Charter Caldwell townhomes. 3, town transportation comments must be addressed. 4, water quality concept plan must be approved by staff. 5, address any remaining red line comments with staff.
Just for clarification, are you also adopting staff findings of fact?
My apologies, yes, I am.
There is a motion. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Boone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any opposed? That motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Oh, I've still got to finish my reading here. Hold on. Staff will draft and I will sign a final written decision to reflect the vote and reasoning for this decision. I'd like to thank everyone for attending the hearing, and we welcome you to stay for the other items on the agenda. And if you are leaving, please do so quietly at this time. Thank you all. I'm kind of glad that's hopefully the last one of those. Bite your tongue. All right, we are now going to move to 10C, and this is the medic resolution. Mr. Roberts, did you want to take this one?
Yep, I can. Do you want me to, I can read the whole resolution, or I can,
I would say that the resolution was provided to the board. Are there any concerns with this resolution that was presented? Is there a motion? Commissioner Boone.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion Motion to approve the resolution in response to the proposed medic reconfiguration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Kidwell. Any discussion? Commissioner Munger.
Yeah, just real quick, I'm curious who actually wrote this resolution?
Mr. Roberts?
Actually, staff took resolutions from other towns and modified that resolution. I think Davis and Cornelius were two we worked off of, and then modified that, put Huntersville in place of some of the names and made a couple other changes, and we ran it by our the folks that are on our fire committee, which is Commissioner Boone and Commissioner Partee and Mayor Bales.
Okay, yeah, I just want to say I do appreciate some of the comments within this resolution. Not entirely in agreement with the way MEDIC has chosen to go about this. And out of curiosity, has MEDIC agreed to the terms within this resolution?
They've not received those terms yet. As soon as it is adopted, it will be delivered. Okay. There is a motion, and there is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion carries 5-0. We'll now move to item 10D. And this is the HFFA HVAC equipment and installation of services purchase. And instead of Mr. Brown, this evening we have Mr. Eversman. How are you this evening, sir?
How about yourself?
Good, thank you. Before I turn it over to you, I do want to remind this board that this, what you have before you this evening in awarding this contract, it must have a supermajority vote, so it needs at least 4 of you to support it this evening. And that this item was deferred from our first meeting in April, so it's been deferred here. I will now turn it over to you, sir.
Stole all my words right there.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this is a deferred agenda from the previous meeting, April 3rd, for the award of the contract for the replacement of HVAC systems for the large 50-meter pool of HFFA. MSS Solutions, with the representative here this evening, has been determined to be the lowest responsible bidder based off of the state statutes, the process that we followed, and town staff review.
Is there a motion at this time?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve the award of the contract included in the agenda packet for the purchase and the installation of HVAC equipment at HFFA to MSS Solutions, the lowest responsive and responsible bidder.
There's a motion and there is a second. Now we'll open it up for discussion. Any discussion? Commissioner Munger.
Chatty as usual. I'll just kind of bring up the points I brought up last time, specifically the additional capital outlay. We're looking at approximately $1.25 to $1.3 million that's coming out of the general fund to fix something that never really, 5 years ago, we put in this ventilation system and it failed almost from day one, and it's just kind of a disaster. It really just feels like we're throwing money down the drain. We have $8 million available, as Jackie pointed out last time. We have roughly $50 million in the general fund. Of that, $42 million is otherwise allocated, which leaves us $8 million that is free for us to do different projects. And the idea that we're spending, $1.3 million on this, on something that just, I struggle with this. And one other thing to kind of keep in mind, as Jackie had pointed out as well, based on the reval, our per penny is 1.5 million. You're essentially saying if we have let's say we go crazy and get with 20-cent property tax when we come up for budget or through the reval process, we're basically saying 5% of that, 1 cent, is going for this particular project. I can't do that. I'll be voting against this.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you. 5 years ago, when this system was put in, the current company was just taking over for another company. A lot of debate on the two companies at the time, but it had nothing to do with the system. The system was pre-approved by a previous company. They were told it was going to work. Unfortunately, it has failed. It's been failing. It's continued to fail. And the company that put into the system and the company who created the system has washed their hands of it. I feel confident that MSS is going to put in the right system that's going to last us for years to come. And it will give the proper air quality to that pool that we so need. We've got divers in Washington or heading to Washington, D.C. that practice in that pool tonight. They're going to qualify for the Olympics. You know, we've got future Olympians training down here. And I think it's worth the investment in a facility that we're tied to. It's not going anywhere. County owns the property. We own the building. It's got a 99-year lease. We got years of debt on it. That's ours. And we got to make sure that we are creating a good air quality environment for these children that are trained to be athletes, whether it's at the college level, whether it's the Olympic level, or whether it's just they want to dive into a pool on a hot summer day or a cold winter morning. Doesn't matter. We've got to take care of it. It is our responsibility to that facility and to those patrons.
Commissioner Kovacs.
I echo what Commissioner Munger's thoughts are. I genuinely do believe it's fiscally irresponsible for us to put such a large amount of money in something that we are continually putting money into without money coming back to us. But what I feel would be more irresponsible would be to, we got money from the state. We requested money from the state, and Bradford, Representative Bradford went to bat for us and requested money for us. And I think it would be more irresponsible to ruin the relationship with him and the state by going back and saying, never mind, we don't want this because I don't want to burn bridges on future funding. But I do think we have got to do something to sit down and figure out a way that this could, it doesn't need to be profitable, but we can't continually keep going negative in what we've put in without anything ever coming out of it. So I will have to support this because I do think it would be more irresponsible to burn bridges.
Commissioner Partee.
I am a frequent user of the Aquatic Center. I work out there 4 or 5 times a week, and specifically on weekends, I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to see the families come in with their children for the swim lessons, the babies. We have a daycare that uses the facility. So, and as Commissioner Munger had, Commissioner Kidwell has stated, it's an Olympic facility. We have an Olympic diving board, platform, and it's Olympic swimming in distance. And it's been officially recognized by the Olympic Committee for our athletes to qualify for the Olympics. On weekends, we have, it's even used so much, we have valet parking. It's like a festival there. And this is our town, Huntersville. And the community is using it. And it warms me to see the kids, the families enjoying the facility. So I am for this measure wholeheartedly.
Commissioner Boone, did you have anything else you'd like to weigh in? Thank you, sir. Thank you. All I will say is that we own this facility. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it was built 20-some years ago, and it's our responsibility to maintain. So there is a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? And those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 10E, and this is the budget amendment for HFFA and the HVAC. And this is the town received $650,000 from the state as a state-directed grant to offset the cost of this air filtration system. And I will turn it over to Ms. Huffman.
Thank you. So the item you just approved, there is no budget to pay for. This item would fund the funding available to pay for that. $650 of it is in the form of a grant from the state, which you agreed to accept at the previous meeting. The balance of the contract we paid from a general fund balance amendment, $1,350,000. Happy to respond to any questions you have.
Is there a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve appropriating $650,000 to grant revenue and capital expenses and $1,350,000 of fund balance and capital expenses to pay for the estimated cost of the new air filtration system for HFFA.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Commissioner Partee, is there any discussion or any questions for Ms. Huffman? Seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? That motion carries. And we'll now move to item 10F. Major Graham, this is a budget amendment from the Department of Treasury, Homeland Security Revenue to the Police Capital Expense Account.
Thank you, ma'am. Back for round two. During the past couple of weeks since this was put on the schedule, I've received several emails, texts, things like that. I've tried to answer as most adequately as possible. We've been more than happy to go through each individual item we've got on here and discuss them, or we can just start answering questions or anybody have, because I think I've tried to answer every one of these questions I've received over the last week.
And before I open it for questions, I do want to remind the board that because this is a budget expenditure, that this is must be a supermajority vote. Commissioner Kidwell.
Yes, actually, I have a question for Town Attorney. Ms. Sloop, can we divide this in a motion? One for a motion talking about the financing, and the other, another motion, within that motion, I guess, talking about what's being purchased.
So you, if I'm understanding correctly, are you saying that you may want to approve some of the purchases and not the others, and also a different number than?
Well, for instance, I would, hypothetically speaking, make a motion to approve the use of, funds for handgun towers, motorcycle, et cetera, but not another motion to not use the actual funds here, but use fund balance.
Do that.
You could make that in the same motion, so you would just specify the source of the funding in the motion.
Okay.
Commissioner Partee.
Thank you, Mayor. Major Graham, I appreciate your answers to the question regarding asset forfeiture funds. In my early years as a police officer, I had, and I just want to let my board members and my commissioners know the background as to how those asset forfeiture funds come about. I was tapped by the Nassau County Police Department to work on an undercover operation. These are major federal funds, asset forfeiture funds that were acquired because of the operation that I was deeply involved in. In 1987, and this is all confidential because I had to protect, for the protection of my identity, which was, well, actually 1987. Even now, my identity is protected as an undercover operative. But just to pass this to my commissioners here so they can see how I look working undercover. The Department of Justice in the Eastern District had tapped me in 1987 to go under with another black undercover agent from the FBI. And it was a major organized crime, and it involved a major Harlem drug king distribution network. And the law enforcement agencies involved in this operation was the FBI, NYPD, Nassau County, and DEA. And they selected myself and this other brother because of our ability to blend in and get into some of the most nefarious areas of New York City, the Bronx, Yonkers, Staten Island, and Long Island. The Harlem drug dealer, and this is, they can look it up, people that are online watching this right now. The Harlem drug dealer, who at the time was named Leroy Nicky Barnes. And after he was arrested by the feds, his second lieutenant, Monsanto, I'm not going to name their first name, who was also in a federal prison, was conducting business with the organized crime members that were also incarcerated in this federal prison to acquire heroin, cocaine, to distribute, to continue the operation in the metropolitan area, in Long Island area. The brains, the central brains of the operation was located in Long Island. That's where the wire was. You know, understand with the wire. And because of the wire was centrally located in Long Island, I was tapped to go under and infiltrate locations so that the U.S. attorney, and I'm charged with gathering evidence so the U.S. attorneys can make a case to acquire those asset forfeiture funds, which down the road I will explain, and also the other agent itself. And our jobs was to observe drug transactions, kilos being exchanged by other members of the Harlem organization, documenting vehicles that the transactions were conducted in, and also making buys in vehicles, cocaine kilos, verifying the drug houses where the product is being processed, being in there, watching the product, packaging the product, identifying the local drug dealers who distribute the product, making documentation, identifying the weapons that the gangs have. And mind you, the individual police officers that work the streets do not know I'm out there and the other agents out there. I'm out there without a wire. I'm out there without a gun. I'm given false identification. The vehicle I use comes back to a home or another resident that is also undisclosed. And in the event somebody wants to run the plate or they have questions about who this person is. My role is I have false ID, as I said before. Every once in a while, I might wear a wire, but they don't want to do that for the protection of my protection. Upon conviction now of the defendants, after a search warrant is issued, an arrest warrant is issued, based on the evidence that we gather as undercovers to complete the operation. The homes, the proceeds, property that they acquire from selling these drugs, heroin, cocaine, is after the conviction of these particular individuals, and all appeals are exhausted, Ms. Sloop. The monies that's auctioned off, not the monies, but the property that's auctioned off by the U.S. Marshal's Office. You can go online and you can see the cars, you can see the jewelry, you can see the homes, the commercial property. All those proceeds go into a fund, asset forfeiture fund, and it's distributed down to not just one, to all the local agencies that particularly were involved in the operation itself. And I say that because I don't look for adulation. I don't get adulation for what I do for the community, what I do for the state of New York, what I do for the metropolitan areas, because that's not our job. My job is to go out there and make a case, risk my life, and make sure that it doesn't come back to my family. And the men and women doesn't regard black, white, or whoever who work undercover. We're out there in the streets. You never know who we are. And the monies that come back are redistributed to the agency so that they can continue the fight. And right now we have fentanyl that's killing these kids like crazy. We have heroin that's still out there to continue the fight. And there's nothing nefarious about police departments getting asset forfeiture monies, because these drug dealers, they're making billions, they're making trillions. And there's cash out there. So with that, I just want to and I'm not talking down to anybody, I'm not trying to be whatever, this is what I was involved in. and other officers are out there, we have them out here, still involved in. But working a major metropolitan area case like this, and I worked 2 cases. The other case that I worked, it was read into the congressional record. And nobody knows. And I keep in my identity to this day, no one knows. But that's how the money's come. And it's for our equipment, it's for our weapons. And by the way, weapons that are seized in these drug cases, they're sent to the labs to be tested for any open cases, any open homicides that might be out there. You know, drug dealers, they like to kill, and they do kill. And then once those cases are adjudicated and all the appeals are exhausted, those guns are destroyed. They're not resold, they're not, you don't get money for them. They're taken and destroyed, just like with the cocaine, the drugs, they're destroyed. So I thank you, Major. I thank the police department for what you do. You know, my heart is there because I think of everybody as a family, our police department. And also, we as a board, we celebrate our last meeting. We had your officers come in for life-saving. We sit here, we celebrate what they do for our community. We stand up and we applaud them. But that's their job. And they probably would do it over and over again. You know, a bar doesn't mean anything to me. What gives me pleasure is saving a life. It's providing safety for our families, taking drugs off the street. I put my life on the line to take drugs off the street, and I will do it again. Because that's what I feel, it's just that's the protection in me, to protect and serve. Thank you, Major.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Any other questions, comments? I love the politeness right now.
Yeah, just kind of following up on that. I mean, I've seen a lot of the emails going back and forth and a lot of the questions, and for me, it concerns me that there are potentially members on this board who appear to be actively working to defund our police department out of a fear of taking money from criminals, some of whom actively work to bring drugs such as fentanyl into our and other communities that kill and destroy the lives of countless Americans. By voting yes tonight, I am saying that when individuals commit crimes, there are consequences, and that our brave men and women in blue need the necessary tools to fight back against people like this. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kidwell would like to speak.
I'd kind of like to respond back to that. I was the commissioner asking the questions, and absolutely not about defunding the police. It was about where the money was coming from. 80% of the money collected at the federal level is administrative. It's not through criminal cases. That's something to be considered. Mooresville, just right up the street, just had to refund some money that they took from a couple innocent people after a long, long court battle. Those individuals had the opportunity to fight to get their money back. Not everybody does. I'm going to shy away from that. Number one, I want to, Commissioner Partee, thank you. I think, and you know, I've got police in my family. I know that you guys going undercover is a huge deal. I know when we have our officers, we got a few that are under different federal agencies. They go undercover. It's a huge deal.
Correct.
But great political grandstanding by Commissioner Munger. This is not an opportunity to defund the police. This is about transparency of where this money comes from. If we could identify where each dollar comes from and say it came from a drug bust in Cornelius, or it came from a drug bust in the airport, or we found somebody with a truckload of guns and $1 million, and we took them down. That's transparency. We don't know where each dollar comes from. That's an issue for me. And that should be an issue for all of us. A friend of mine was just recently going through the airport. He buys precious metals. He had it shipped to him work in another state. He's coming through the airport, and they open the box. They're like, "What are you doing with a couple $1,000s worth of silver?" He's like, "I collect precious metals." "Oh, do you? Prove it." "Well, How? How does he prove it? It took him an hour through security just to prove that he was responsible for that $1,500 or whatever it was on the precious metal and silver. Another issue is we've had individuals get pulled over where they might have $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 of cash in them. They're going to go buy a vehicle, an ATV or something like that. That's money that they've saved up. Cash or check every week. They might not believe in banks. They get pulled over. An officer might say, hey, that's way too much money to have on you. They seize it, and then they have to go through a court battle to get it back. And sometimes they just don't have the means to do that. Everything you're asking for, Major Graham, thank you for the explanation, by the way, because I know I asked a lot of questions. Completely agree with. Except for the Greenway electric vehicle card. I don't see a need for the town to have a souped-up golf cart. I would rather have us and I put this in an email if someone would have read it, true patrols down there with motocross bikes, because we have dirtways and greenways, and we need to get there and in and out fast, and for people to hear us. People run with earbuds on, they bike with earbuds on, they might not hear a golf cart coming up behind them. And frankly, they're probably on their cell phones too, so they're looking down and may not see you coming forward either. But it comes back to the funds for me. So if a motion was made tonight to say separate the funds from the items, I would support the items 100% from our general fund. I cannot support the taking or using of money where we don't know where it comes from. Because even if it affects just 20% of individuals who it was taken from them and it was done unjustly, it's wrong. Thank you.
Commissioner Boone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and most of you know that I'm on the Board of Directors for Crime Stoppers, and I realize there's not a lot I can say about this, and Major Graham, maybe you can backfill some of the information that I leave out of this. But we all know that there was a small girl that was missing in the town of Cornelius, and the working relationships with the Cornelius and Huntersville Police Department, where they work with the FBI, Homeland Security, the folks at the airport, they were able to have boots on the ground. Cornelius Police Department had boots on the ground within 12 hours after this girl was reported missing. And I think that's about as much as I should say. Major, do you have anything to add to that?
That is correct. They had folks in Michigan, the FBI, had someone in their task force, and they had folks in Michigan and some other places looking for them very quickly. So it is about, I think, Mr. Boone's trying to say it's about relationships, and it is about relationships as well. Can I respond back to Commissioner Kidwell? Absolutely. Two things that you said, the Mooresville thing and then the officers stopping and taking a car. I'm not denying that happens. I will say that the Huntersville Police Department doesn't do that, number one. We do not adopt cases through the federal government. We have our officers that are on the task force that originate these cases down there. If an officer stops somebody out here and they have a bunch of money on it, the state of North Carolina prohibits us from doing civil seizures. We cannot do it. It's against the law. It has to be related to a crime. That's the only time we could do that. The action that happened in Mooresville, they did a criminal case. They seized the stuff. They got the money. They went to court. The judge gave them the money. It's told them to give them the money back, and then they got the government to adopt the case. I'm not going to give my opinion about that. We do not do that. We've been doing this 13 years, started in 2010. With the HSI, we've had some folks in the DEA as well. HSI, or the Department of Treasury, is a little antiquated. Everything they do is on paper. Like when we do a case down there and you give a receipt to the person, they write it out on pen and paper and hand them a copy of it. When we submit our forms through them, we sign it out. It has to be an original signature. Department of Justice is everything's electronic. I've got access to their files, minimal files. The U.S. Department of Treasury is going on to this particular front-facing website, and I can't say public because it's not. We sign an agreement to be able to go in there and look at those cases. I can tell you the date and how much it is. It doesn't have people's names on it, but I can tell you if it was a civil seizure, if it was an administrative seizure, if it was a criminal seizure. The Department of Treasury or the Homeland Security is committed to us. We have an email that they are going to that exact same system. I don't have access to it right now. I've talked to these folks in Charlotte. They said, going forward, as soon as we get a check, if we will contact them at that point, they will do everything they can to find us which case this is related to. So I can't go back and fix what's happened. I'm trying my best to fix what's going forward. This time next year, I should be able to give you a lot more information if everything is electronic. I just don't have that information. I can tell you that it took approximately to get $284,000. It's approximately 22 cases that we brought in money from that. And we get asked the question, how many people's rights do we violate? I would have to say 0. We've got no complaints. We've got no ethics violations. We had no, it's been through the civil court. It's been through the criminal court. It's been through administrative court, all the appeals and everything else. I have nothing to prove, nothing to show that we've proved that we've done anything wrong. And what you said, it happens. It absolutely happens. I know that. But in North Carolina, we are not allowed to do that. And we've had one adoption case in Huntersville. I talked to both of our criminal investigation commanders today. It was years ago. I came in at the tail end of that. We had a robbery call on Sanford Road. We go in there. The victim, we're in there to interview him. He's got a safe open, ton of drugs in there. We come back out. We immediately call our task force at that point. We didn't work the case and turn it over to her later. That's the only thing that comes close to doing an adoption case that we found, and we turned it over at that time. We do not have an adoption case. I don't have a policy that says we don't do it, but that is our practice. Anything that's originated from any of this money that comes in from the DEA or the HSI originates from a drug case. Now, during that drug case, they may do human trafficking, embezzlement, money laundering, things like that happens. But we have to go to court and prove every single dollar is related to a drug case. We have to do that in front of a judge. All administrative seizures are done through a judge. Generally, that happens. They go through there. They get charged criminally. The defendant decides they don't want to fight that in court about whatever they've taken, whether that's money, houses, jewelry, whatever happens to be. The administrative court issues a warrant out by a judge, issues a thing back to that folks by an order out of the judge saying you've got on this date to claim that you want to be part of this to get your stuff back, and they never respond. And you're right, 86% of our cases through the DEA is administrative. The people have abandoned it, basically, is what it is. We have 6% of criminal and 6% civil. The civil cases through the DEA, I can tell you back to the address it was in Huntersville that was seized. The only reason it was civil is because a man and a woman both had their name on the house. He was a convicted drug dealer for making steroids and things like that. So the U.S. government seized the house, made him sell it, and then he had to pay his portion, and then she got her money back out of the house. So your statement is true, but I want to assure everybody sitting on this board, Huntsville Police Department doesn't do that. Yes, sir.
Is there a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I make a motion to appropriate Department of Homeland Security revenue in the amount of $284,000 to the police capital expense account for the purchase of police equipment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Munger. Any additional discussion? You're more than welcome to make a substitute motion.
Motion to appropriate $284,000 from the general fund balance to police capital expense account to be used on stated items. I think that would allow for our police department to get needed items. But like you said, they are a little antiquated and late on updating their systems, so that would allow time for you to get what you need, but before we are using funds that we can't tie to cases, we can at least use our funds so you can get what you need, and then when we can have that electronic trail to be more comfortable with using the Homeland Security revenue.
Commissioner Kovacs, to be clear, your motion is to appropriate $284,000 from the general fund. Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? There's a substitute motion on the floor.
I'm commenting specifically on the substitute motion.
Okay,
That is it.
Commissioner Munger.
One of the comments in the substitute motion was we don't know which cases. Did you say that, and maybe I misheard, that there were 22 specific cases that this money was tied to?
There's the $284,000. It took 22 cases that we brought in money for to add up to $284,000.
And you know those 22 cases?
we have the 22,000s come through here. I don't have access to those case files to tell you their names or what it was related to that. But I'm just saying the money, because one of the questions we always ask is how many cases were involved to make up 284,000. That would be approximately 22 cases over the last years.
That was the clarification specific to the motion. That was.
Okay. Commissioner Partee?
Just for clarification, now, the asset forfeiture funds, will that go into a bank account? Will that go into the escrow fund that we're receiving from Homeland Security? Or
money's
because we're
already
going to
in
the general-
an account.
We already have it.
Because Commissioner Kovacs made an amendment for it to go from the general fund.
Correct.
Right, she doesn't want- but where does the asset forfeiture funds?
The asset forfeiture funds would simply just still stay in the account that it sits in.
Sits in, right, that's my question.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Roberts, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that asset forfeiture funds will sit there. They're typically used for, you can't supplant things. So those funds will stay there and, I guess, collect dust. But if we pull this, we'll be pulling out a general fund balance, just like you did tonight for HFFA. I will tell you that we should be using these funds for these type things. If there's something you don't like on there, pull it off. But I would say this is exactly what you should be using these funds for, or they sit there. But that's a board decision.
All right, there is a motion and there is a second. All those in favor of the substitute motion? And those opposed? That is 2-3. We'll go back to the original motion.
The motion failed, but there wasn't a supermajority. Emily, Ms. Sloop, how does the motion fail or pass?
Either way.
Okay, just check.
Yes. So we're now back to the original motion that was made to allocate $284,000 out of the police capital expense account. Do you have a question?
I do.
Commissioner Bidwell.
Who made the motion? Dan? Commissioner Boone? Or
Commissioner Partee.
Commissioner Partee, would you amend your motion? Not emotion. Would you amend the motion to include coming back to the board with specifics of the cases at a later date?
Major, let me ask a question. What is the time frame of getting that information regarding cases that the commissioners are asking for?
Sure, absolutely. Like I said, the Department of Justice has a front-facing website. We're literally going to have to go back and find someone at HSI that's going to pull up each individual case that we've had involvement with and track that through until we get a resolution, because we don't have that electronically. It may take a while.
Okay, my answer to Commissioner Kidwell is no, because time is of the essence. I mean, this came from a federal major drug case. I mean, I don't see what the issue is as far as, we need to supply, we need to fund our police department. I mean, if nobody else wants to do it, then that's fine, but I'm for the police department. And I don't see what the debate is all about. I really don't. I mean, major cases are being made across the country. Federal cases are being made. I mean, no one's nickel and diming their police department, so I don't see what the issue is.
Commissioner Kovacs' motion, which failed, did fund the police department. So I don't think it's a matter of anyone here not wanting to fund the police department. It's where the money's coming from.
All right, there is a motion on the floor, and there is a second. Any additional discussion around this topic? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any opposed? Motion carries. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Major. We are now going to move into Mayor and Commissioner reports and closing comments. We will start with Commissioner Boone. Do you have any? No report. Commissioner Kovacs.
The Lake Norman Chamber tomorrow, April 18th, from 3 to 4:30 is the Core for Business Coaching Seminar with Harm Stratman. The Lake Norman Chamber will be hosting on how to make your small business more profitable. It'll be held at the Chamber in the Randy Marion Conference Room. Wednesday, April 19th, from 2 to 3 is a group ribbon cutting for businesses without brick and mortar, so please come and join them as they celebrate Dry Otter Waterproofing, 21 Roofing, King of Pops, Snap Happy Photos, and Travel Bee Adventures at the Chamber. Thursday, April 20th, from 5 to 7 is the Business After Hours at the Hideaway Lake Norman, Northwestern Mutual, and M2R, Wealth and Wellness over wine. So join at the Hideaway for beverages and networking. And lastly, Thursday, April 27th, from 8:15 to 3 p.m. is the Women's Conference at the Peninsula Club in Cornelius.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Kidwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to let everybody know, the mobility plan for the town of Huntersville has been launched on our website. Please go to it, fill it out. We want your input. I shared it on my social media today, so if you can't find it on the website, you can find the link there. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Commissioner Partee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to state on April 17th, the Greenway Commission will meet the Greenway Commission will meet Tuesday, April 18th at the Town Rotunda from 6 p.m. to 7:30. Public is invited. On April 19th, the Parks and Rec Commission will meet on Wednesday. We will be meeting at the Bradford Park Softball Shelter at 6:30. The public's invited. The Planning Board meeting is also this Tuesday, April 25th, at the Town Hall Boardroom from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And then this weekend, we have Jazz in the Park, Veterans Park downtown here in the luxurious downtown areas, Saturday and Sunday, 22nd and the 23rd, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And as always, I want to advocate for gun safety, especially in homes where guns are stored and children are present. Accidental intentional discharge causes serious injury and death. The Huntersville Police Department has free gun safety locks. Organizations and individuals can contact me or the police department. I am at dpartee@huntersville.org. Let's be child safe. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Munger.
I always go last. I want to go first next meeting.
You got it.
Unfortunately, I will not be in attendance at our next town board meeting on May 1st, 2023. Oh, darn. Due to work-related commitments. And as always, if you have the opportunity to give, please consider supporting our local nonprofits. Thank you.
Thank you. My only report this evening is that spring has truly sprung in Huntersville, so there's plenty of opportunities to get out and about. Join us for I'm sorry? Okay. Okay. Join us for a wide variety, whether it's out at the jazz festivals or Hello Huntersville that's coming up. I would like to share that the Scottish Highland Games were a huge success this year. On Saturday alone, there were well over 5,000 people out there, and they were coming from everywhere. I think the furthest family that I spoke with showed up from Canada, Ontario, Canada. So they were from all over the place. And it was a great festival, and it was a great opportunity to just really highlight one of Huntersville's unique and special gems, Rural Hill. Commissioner Munger, you had one more thing?
Sorry, I said at the beginning of the meeting, and I kid you not, Kim, I specifically told Anthony to put you under house arrest. I'm upset that you're leaving, but I do hope everything works well. You were a fabulous addition to this town. You've done amazing things. You brought vision to what I believe we thought the public information officer would be when we voted for it. We couldn't have had a better first person to fill that role, and I wish you nothing but the best in the future. Thank you.
And hopefully we will have her for a couple more weeks, right? All right. Are there any additional comments? Is there a motion on the floor to adjourn?
Second.
There's a motion and a second, and all those in favor? Good night, Huntersville.